Okay, thank you. On behalf of the Department of Political Science, we want to welcome you to our Congress to Campus Forum this evening. And before we begin, I really want to thank a number of people who made this possible. First of all, I want to thank the Departments of Political Science, History, and Communication Studies, the various schools on campus, School of Business, School of Education, School of Engineering, School of Nursing, and the College of Arts and Sciences, the Honors Program, and ASUP for making this possible, for bringing these two former members of Congress to campus. We're really honored to have with us tonight in a rather informal way, and I'm going to give the two members of Congress an opportunity to talk a little bit about themselves, to introduce themselves to all of you here, and then give you a chance to ask any questions that you might have with regard to their experiences in the institution. And what I want to do is just go ahead and introduce them and give them, let's say, 5 minutes. They can talk a little bit about who they are, and then I'd also like to ask them to tell us a little bit about how they got into politics and how they got into Congress, how they got interested in Congress. And then we're going to go ahead and throw it open to you to ask any kinds of questions that you might have about the workings of the institution. First of all, to my left is Martin Lancaster. Martin is a former House member from the state of North Carolina. Martin served 8 years in the United States House of Representatives. He served on a wide range of different committees, primarily armed services, and after serving in the House of Representatives, Martin left and then went to work for the Army Corps of Engineers. He was the head of the Army Corps of Engineers, appointed by President Clinton. After that, he went to work for the North Carolina Community College System, which is the 3rd largest community college system in the United States. To his left is Representative Gil Gudney. Gil comes to us from the state of Minnesota. He is a former member of the Minnesota State Legislature, as Martin is a former member of the North Carolina State Legislature. They both had a common experience serving in state legislatures. Gil comes to us after having served in Congress for 12 years. He was elected in the historic election of 1994, which returned Republicans in terms of control of the House of Representatives for the first time in 40 years. And Gil has, again, a wide range of different interests. He served on a wide range of different committees while he was in the House of Representatives, including the Agricultural Committee. He has an interest in renewable energy. While serving on that specific committee, he served on the Budget Committee. And since then, he's gone back to Rochester, where he has business interests in Rochester, and he's going to talk a little bit about his experience also after leaving the House of Representatives. So I'd like you to join me with welcoming both of these former members of Congress to campus, and just to ask them to give us a little bit of an introduction about who they are and how they got involved in Congress, and then let you ask questions about whatever it is you want to know about Congress, and I promise you that they will be able to answer that. I should point out that Congress to Campus, which sent both of these members here, always sends a Democrat and a Republican. And they may not always agree on everything, but I will tell you this, after having spent time with them today, is that these two former members agree on the importance of public service. I know they deeply love their country, and I know they deeply enjoyed their time in the House of Representatives. So with that, I'd like to welcome the two of them here to the University of Portland.
Go ahead. Is this working? Yes. It is working. First of all, I see lots of faces that I think I've seen before today. How many of you have been in a classroom setting or other setting today and seen us before? So thank you. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm pleased that you would come back, and that you didn't get enough earlier today. It has been for me, a very rewarding experience to be on your beautiful campus and to talk with so many students who have impressed me so with the intelligence of your questions and the interest that you have in the U.S. Congress. Those of you who have already heard us today have already heard this field, so I'll try to keep it as short as possible because you don't need to hear it again. But I became interested in politics as a teenager, serving first as a page in the North Carolina House and then ultimately working as an intern in state government and as an intern in the U.S. Senate. And those experiences led me into a life of public service because I saw so many dedicated people who were working either in the state legislature, in state government, or in the U.S. Senate who had dedicated their lives to public service, and I was inspired by them to seek a similar life for myself. I'm a graduate of the University of North Carolina, both undergraduate in law, and served first in the U.S. Navy as a JAG, and then went back to the small town from which I came and practiced law with a law school classmate until I went to Congress. And in the legislature, which in North Carolina is a part-time job, I continued to practice law at home, and then ultimately was elected after 8 years in the legislature to Congress. A couple of times today we've been asked of what motivated us and was there a particular issue that we had a passion to fix in our legislature. And though I care deeply about a number of issues, what really motivated me to go first to the legislature and then to Congress was simply a personal desire to serve and to serve the interest of and the needs of constituents in my respective districts. So I think with that, I'll stop talking and let Gil talk a little bit, and then as we've done all day today, respond to your questions.
Well, thank you, Martin, and can you all hear me? And one of the things that in the intro, some of you may or may not know, I'm also a licensed and bonded auctioneer. And when I say that, people usually look at me and say, can he really do that? And so I almost have to give them a little, and now 75, give 80, now 5, 85, give 90, now 5, around. Yes, I really can't do that, and that is in some respects part of the story of how a kid from a small town in the upper Midwest ultimately wound up in Washington, D.C. It wasn't part of a master plan. Those of you who have heard me so far today, I try to remind students, and I think I can say that on this campus, that God has a plan for your life. It may not be what you think his plan should be, but he has a plan. And if it is really your job to try and find whatever that plan is. And when you do, when you're on that path, your life will be much more satisfying and much more exciting. And I was lucky enough, fortunate enough, blessed enough that I was able to sort of find that path and for the most part try to stay on it most of my adult life. I got interested in government and politics when I was in grade school. I was handing out literature for a congressman when I was about 10 years old, and then ultimately got invited to attend the state Republican convention when I was in high school. And I was a 17-year-old, and I sat in the back of this big auditorium, and they were having these knockdown, drag-out fights over the party platform, and I remember a gentleman grabbing the microphone and hollering into it, Mr. Chairman, the chair wouldn't recognize him, and there were practically fistfights breaking out on the floor of that convention, and I sat in the back of this huge auditorium, an impressionable 17-year-old, and I said to myself, this is for me. I found it fascinating, but I never really thought it would ever become a vocation. I went to college, I majored in business, I wound up going to the territory, selling school supplies and equipment for a number of years. And along the way, one of my customers, one of my best customers, went to auction college, and I started helping him out with auctions. And I tell this story because in many respects it changed my life. Because, and I won't give a long story here because I want to entertain more of your questions, but ultimately I filled out an application form and went to auction college, and it was important because it was something I always wanted to do. And I did that, and then when I had a chance to run for the legislature, it was clearly something I'd always kind of wanted to do. And then I got a chance to run for the United States Congress, and it was something I always wanted to do. And I agree with Martin, it wasn't one issue, it wasn't even, I didn't think it was a group of issues, but there was just something about public service, about politics, about serving in the legislature or the Congress, that I was a little like a moth being drawn to the flame. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time in the state legislature. I ultimately became what was called the floor leader for the House Republicans. It was my job to organize the debates every day, and I just absolutely loved the real debates that we had in the legislature. And people, this has come up several times today, well, which do you enjoy more, serving in the state legislature or serving in the United States Congress? The question is absolutely crystal clear. I enjoy serving in the legislature more because we dealt with real issues, we dealt with, and we had real debates. And in Congress, that's not really the case. But nonetheless, I have to say both were incredibly satisfying. I had a chance to travel. I had a chance to meet some of the most interesting people in the world. We were talking just before we came in here that I was blessed to be in the room when Mother Teresa came to the U.S. Capitol building and she received the Congressional Medal of Honor. Then about a year or two later, we gave the Congressional Gold Medal to the head of the Eastern Orthodox Church, His All Holiness Bartholomew. And this holy man had spent most of his adult life wrestling with and battling the communists on the other side of the Iron Curtain. And I will never forget something that he said, and I will share it with you. He said what he had learned in his over 40 years of dealing with communists on the other side of the planet was that faith can survive without freedom, but freedom cannot survive without faith. And what a powerful thing for me to learn, and hopefully maybe you can use that somewhere along the way. But it has been a marvelous journey, and I was just very privileged to serve for 12 years in both the U.S. House and the Minnesota House. And we're here essentially to share some of our stories and our experiences and maybe our insights in terms of what happened then and what's happening now. And with that, we'll open it up to your questions. One at a time, please. Yeah?
You said that you like legislature more because you got real debates. What is Congress? It's not debating. What do they do when they're not debating?
Essentially, if you watch C-SPAN, what you will see is very rarely are what I describe as real debates. Real debates is where you actually debate against another member or a group of members, and you question each other, and you make your points, and so forth. Essentially what happens in Congress is members just get up and read speeches, unfortunately very often written by their staffs, and there isn't a give and take. And members seldom are persuaded by the debate on the floor of the House, because in point of fact, very rarely do members even listen to the debate that's going on before the House, and as I say, it's not real. In the state legislature, you would get up and we had a number of rules, but the most important rule was nobody got to speak twice until everybody got to speak at least once. And you had real honest debates. You question people about the bill or the amendment, one of the most common expressions on the floor of the House was, will the gentleman yield? And that means you were going to ask a question. You better be prepared because it's probably going to be a tough question. The other thing I would mention about the miracle of the legislature is you could have a very heated debate with another member, either on your side of the aisle or more often on the other side. And when that debate is ended, the speaker would say, the clerk will take the roll, and then everybody voted. Now you've had your chance, you've had your say, you've got it out of your system, and now you have the vote, and you may win or you may lose, but at least there's a satisfaction that you gave your best shot. And then after the speaker announces the outcome of that particular vote, he announces the next bill. And it can't, more often than you can even imagine, someone you've been debating against 2 minutes earlier is now a co-sponsor on the next bill with you. And so there's a collegiality in the legislature that is very rare, rarely seen in the Congress.
I don't have anything to add.
You said that in Congress, the opposition doesn't even listen to the other side's arguments. It seems to be a symptom of bipartisan politics. So, what do you think can be done to alleviate that problem?
I don't know how you turn back the clock. When I went to Congress in 1987, there was a spirit of collegiality that existed then that is not present now. Part of it was that members of Congress came to Washington, and when I arrived, I would say 70% of the members had their families in Washington. And we met from Monday night until Friday noon or thereabouts. Now they come in on Tuesday afternoon. They work a full day Wednesday and go home Thursday at noon. There is very little opportunity for members of Congress to get to know each other on a personal level. There's much less fact-finding trips on which members from both parties can get to know each other on a more personal level. And so it's just a different atmosphere now than it was as recently as 15 years ago. And that's too bad. I don't know how you get back to that level of collegiality. Congress is now very partisan, very ideological, and very uncompromising. And I think democracy requires compromise. Seeking consensus on issues, testing various views of an issue and how you're going to deal with it. And now, unfortunately, the House passes its version of legislation, sends it to the Senate where it's ignored. The Senate passes its version of legislation, sends it to the House where it's ignored. And no consensus is ever even sought, much less achieved. And it's just a different atmosphere that prevails now in Congress. And I don't know how you fix it. I wish I did.
I would agree with everything Martin just said. I would add to it this. One of the rules we had in the Minnesota legislature that we enforced, and I made sure we enforced fairly scrupulously, and I held myself, at least I tried to hold myself to a higher standard than anybody else, and that is it was a violation of the rules of the House to question the motives of another member. And what you see in Washington today, and this is as a substitute for honest debates about issues, is you see a lack of respect for other members and a constant questioning motives. Well, he only supports that because fill in the blank. He only supports that because he's standing up for the rich people against the poor people. And there's a whole lot of not only pitting one side against the other, but reducing debates to incredibly petty, personal levels. I think that's very destructive. I think people ought to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. I think we ought to have real, honest debates, whether it's about immigration reform or the budget or what to do about the Middle East. But I think it starts with all sides respecting and understanding that honest people, decent people, can look at the same set of facts and come to different conclusions. And that doesn't happen much in Washington. And that's partly driven by our national media and the 24-hour news cycle. There is a strong push to make sure you get your side of the story told on whether it's Fox or CNN or whatever, MSNBC. The other part of the problem is advocacy journalism. Most of the members of the media have taken sides. They had sides before, but they kept them to themselves. They don't do that anymore. I mean, I told some students today, I read your local paper this morning, and virtually all of the issues, in my opinion, that were about policy questions look more like editorials to me than a newspaper stating facts. And I think that drives all of it. I think our culture has become a lot more crass. And we don't respect each other as much as we should. And that there are a whole lot of reasons for that. But I'm an eternal optimist, and I'm a big believer in a gentleman by the name of William Wilberforce. William Wilberforce was a member of the British Parliament, and some of you may remember was the driving force in ending the slave trade in Great Britain.
He also wrote Amazing Grace.
But Wilberforce's other driving ambition as a member of Parliament was to return manners to the British people. They had become extremely rude and crude. And I would argue that he made an enormous impression on the British people, because even today, I think most of the people in this room would agree that the British are one of the most manly people. And we can all improve on that.
Unless you ever watch their debates.
Well,
The House of Commons
it's
is really wrong.
raucous, yes. But even within that, there's generally speaking a sense of humor that goes with their debates. That the British have a great sense of humor, but as a society, they're much more manly, and they owe that in large part to a gentleman by the name of William Wilberforce. Long answer, I'm sorry. Yes.
I was hoping you could speak to the importance of personal relationships when it comes to legislating, or just personal relationships in politics in general.
Well, I'll jump on that first. That is also a weakness. We don't have those personal relationships, although I will tell you, there are more personal relationships between people of different parties than most people are aware of. One of the people that I got to know very well and disagreed on most issues was a gentleman who is now the mayor of Chicago. And we had very little in common. We were on opposite sides. Another is one of the first people I ever took a foreign trip with was Dennis Kucinich from Ohio. And to this day, Dennis and I, even though, again, there were at opposite ends of the political spectrum, we remained essentially cordial and on a more friendly basis. That gets to the point that Martin made earlier, and that is that today it is very difficult for members to travel together because it has become so political. I think that's a sad comment on our society. Obviously, we need accountability and transparency, but one of the ad campaigns that ran against me in 2006 was as the leader of the German study group. I had been in Germany about 6 times. And those expenses were paid by the German Marshall Fund. The German Marshall Fund has no political axe to grind. They don't lobby for particular positions. It wasn't as if this was nefarious, but when it was characterized in 30-second spots, it looked like I was on the tape to German corporations. And so it's sad that members don't really get a chance to travel as much as I think they should, especially when you consider we are a big part of what happens in the rest of the world, and we as members of Congress have very little real understanding of how people are thinking in faraway places like Germany or even in Canada.
All of politics, to be effective and to work, requires development of relationships. It's very difficult to hurl the invectives that are now hurled at each other on the opposite sides of the aisle if you have become personal friends, if you've traveled together, if your wives know each other, if your children have played softball together. And that doesn't happen much anymore because everybody stays at home and generally goes home for most of the week. It's important to stay in touch, but in my opinion, far more time is spent now on fundraising, politicking, and being at home than is spent in legislating and in developing those relationships that are required for a democracy to work. So I think they're very important, but very difficult to develop under the current method of running the show.
If I could just add, I mean, you know, it starts from the top down to a certain degree. I served under two presidents, one President Clinton and the other President George W. Bush. President Clinton, even though we voted to impeach him, remained throughout his two terms, very open, and he sent people down to or up to Capitol Hill on a very regular basis, invited us down to the White House very often. He always kept a line of communication open to us. And even during the government shutdown, this is a story that's not been reported widely, he and Newt Gingrich spoke every day during the famous government shutdown. Bill Clinton understood much more than George W. Bush and a lot more than the current president, how important it is to remain at least in communication with members of Congress and members of the other party. And that filtered down much more. And at that time, there wasn't as much in terms of meetings between the speaker and the minority leader and between the chairman and the ranking members of committees as there should have been. But today there's almost no meetings. And I will say that things began to get worse under President George W. Bush. His staff was not very interested in anything that Congress had to say. It was reflected in the way they did business. When we were invited down to the White House, it was for a lecture. It was not for a discussion. And I'll just tell you what, I resented it. And I wasn't the only man that resented it. And today, if I'm not there, based on what I've been told, it is even worse. And so the President of the United States can help to set the tone. And I just think that's part of what's happened over the last couple of years. The tone has gotten much, much worse. As I say, the Clinton White House was much friendlier to me, even after we had voted to impeach him, than the Bush White House ever was to what we had said.
And as Gil said, it really does start at the top. I served under two speakers, Jim Wright for a short time, and then most of the time I was in Congress with Tom Foley. And during all of that time, Bob Michael was the Republican leader. And especially Bob and Tom had a great personal affection for the other, just as President Reagan and Tip O'Neill had a special relationship. And Bob Michael and Tom Foley met each week. One week they would meet in the Speaker's office, the next week in the Leader's office, and they kept lines of communication open, and they set a tone of collegiality that, in my opinion, was beneficial to the whole institution. Now, Nancy Pelosi and John Boehner are more likely to call a press conference to talk to the other ones than they are to pick up the phone. And generally, that press conference is not very positive. And that's, in my opinion, one of the reasons that the lack of collegiality is so prevalent now in the House. And unfortunate, very unfortunate.
I mentioned earlier that when I was in the state legislature and I was the floor leader, I tried to make sure that we kept the debate on the issue and not on personalities. But one time I got, and this happens because the press loves to spice up stories, and I got caught in the hall by a reporter and was asked about a particular matter that the majority leader wanted to bring to the floor. And I just said, that is a stupid idea. Guess what? That was the lead of the story the next day on the front page of the paper. And I was embarrassed. And I picked up the phone and I called him and I apologized to him. And I said, I should not have used that term. That is very personal. I will never do it. I will try never to do it again. But you really rarely see in today's political arena where members will literally apologize and say, I was wrong, that was I should not have done that. And I'm proud to say that at least on one occasion I was big enough to do that. And I think we need more people like that in the political arena who are big enough to say that was a mistake and we should not do that way and we'll try not to do it again. Yes, sir.
It seems like more and more that Americans don't understand how our government works and a lot of how the government functions. Do you think that civics should be emphasized more in our education system, like all the way starting back in elementary school, grade school, all the way through at least high school?
North Carolina has actually a statutory requirement that civics be taught. I think it's in the 8th grade, but there's actually a law that the legislature passed. I can't tell if it's made any difference. And probably the reason is that the teachers don't understand the process either. They're teaching from a text instead of a more personal knowledge, and that's unfortunate. It would be good if there was a greater understanding among students as students, and teachers as teachers, and citizens as citizens than there is. But part of it is a lack of understanding. But I don't know how you mandate it.
Yeah, I was just very fortunate that I had just unbelievably good social studies teachers throughout most of my education life. I'm not sure how you mandate that. If I were to say anything, and I paid a lot of money in tuition to various Catholic schools for my kids growing up. And I can say this, I'm embarrassed, how little they learned that I thought that they needed to learn about morality. And for example, and I asked some classes earlier today, even in the parochial schools, they don't teach the 7 deadly sins anymore. They don't teach a lot of the things that we were taught growing up. And they're the 7 deadly sins because they are deadly. They're not 7 kind of mistakes. And I think kids need to understand that. I think part of our problem is there is a disconnect, and I'll just be really blunt. I think too many churches and too many religious leaders in the United States have surrendered their moral authority, and they have not stood up and said that, envy, for example. This is something I'm really big on. This. The politics of envy that is being raised to an art form in America today is incredibly destructive. Envy will not just destroy people, it will destroy societies. And yet it is now being practiced on a regular basis with impunity. And I think that is, and I'm not even saying you need to change politicians. This has to change in our society, okay? And that starts.
It's not just the church, it's also the family.
Oh, yeah. But people used to turn to the churches for moral guidance. And now we turn to politicians. And everything has become so political, so partisan, but I am, having said that, I believe there is sort of an ebb and flow. And if you read the Old Testament, you see how the Israelites fell away and they came back, and they fell away and they came back. And I would tell people that here they were, they had actually seen the Red Sea part. They had seen the pestilence that had been visited on Egypt.